Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Wednesdays with the Oddball Copywriter. And today I am here with Rocky Buckley. And Rocky has a group that I am a part of called the Power Persona Project and always has the most interesting and thought-provoking questions in there. And he was also in the same group coaching program that I was in, which is how I came across him. So welcome, Rocky. Thank you for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me, Allison. Great to be here.
Sure. We were just talking before we went live here that he does not have gray and rainy weather where he is today. So
Yeah.
Maybe one of the few spots in the country that isn't gloomy right now, because I think even California, I saw on the news, is having some weird weather. Probably not Southern, but anyway.
It makes a difference on your mood, right?
Yeah, huge.
Definitely. For me, it does.
Yeah, it does for me too. It makes me want to get under a blanket and read a book and fall asleep.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So just to get started off here, can you tell us a little bit about what your business is and the Power Persona project that you have?
Yeah, sure. The Power Persona Project was really birthed out of a pretty long experience of having a business that I didn't really love, that I had been successful at, and really at a certain point in my business wanted to reinvent myself. And prior to that, I had never been a public figure at all, never built any kind of an audience whatsoever, and basically had to go through a process of kind of figuring out myself strategically, who I wanted to be, and so on. And out of that, I kind of developed a framework that became sort of this power persona concept. And that's something that I teach and I consult others on. And that's kind of what my community has been built around. So, I've been in business since the last century, since 1999. And over that time, I was primarily doing a lot of consulting for very large companies, corporations, as well as entrepreneurs and experts and people like that. Worked with some of the biggest publishing companies in the world, like Wiley, Pearson, Macmillan, companies like that. And over a period of 20 plus years, I helped those companies to bring thousands of different products to the market, curriculum, digital products, books, etc. So over that time, I kind of got to learn the entire sort of information business and expert business from the inside out at a really high level, at a professional level. And, I was a part of so many different kinds of products. I was a part of a lot of changes inside of that industry when it was largely offline, when it was primarily books and things like that, and then went through that whole digital transition. And so anyway, I've been in business a really long time. And then, starting a few years ago, I really started to hit a point chronologically, age-wise, where I was kind of like, I always felt like I was meant for more. And to be able to do something much bigger, that I was more talented than what I was showing, do something that I was more passionate about, that I really loved. And I kind of hit a moment in my life where I kind of decided I needed to make a move. Either I'm going to do something that I really loved, that I was really passionate about, or I'm never going to have the chance to do that. I was kind of at an age where I felt like it was time to make that move. And so that's sort of where all of this was birthed. And my passion has always come out of this sense of a desire to not see people waste their potential, because that was something I was feeling about myself, that I thought of myself as somebody who would probably be able to make a bigger impact and that kind of a thing, and that I was higher potential than I was really showing. And I kind of tapped into that, and I kind of said, that's really the core passion that I have, is to help other people as well really fulfill their potential and become the best version of themselves that they could be. And then I started narrowing that down pretty specifically to entrepreneurs and people who were building a personal brand, and they were, putting themselves out in public and so on, and really were leaders. And so for me, that's sort of the impetus. That's the passion behind everything that I'm doing right now. Hope that makes sense. It was kind of a roundabout answer, but it makes sense.
No, it does. It's really interesting to me because I've never thought about it in those words, but it drives me crazy too when I see people that aren't realizing their full potential, and it's really frustrating, and think, oh my gosh, why don't they just do this and this? And but unlike you, I do not have a desire to help them do that, because I've tried to before, and it's like I feel like I'm banging my head against a wall. So
Well,
However,
coming up with a process and a strategy, and I think knowing exactly who you're going
mm,
for is makes a big difference. If you're going with people who are just brand new, they're total beginners, that's a much
mhm,
more difficult lift than
yeah,
somebody who's already, got some chops, they've got some experience, some history and a track record. It's
yeah.
easier to help those kind of people figure themselves out because you don't need, it's not as big a climb to do
And
that, I
if
think.
they're already an entrepreneur, then they're willing to put in the work and maybe
Yeah,
listen to some new ideas and things like that.
exactly. Yeah.
That's yeah, that's really cool. Um, so how do you come up with all these thought-provoking questions that you ask in your group? As a copywriter, that's something I strive to do is what you do, and that is I will read a question you ask and it'll stop me, and I may not have an answer right that second, but I will think about it all day and come back later and answer it. How do
Mhm.
you come up with these questions?
Well, like a good copywriter, probably a couple of different tracks. I come up with a lot of them originally, but I also kind of have swipe files, and I
Mhm.
go and I research and I find online, good engagement questions. So I will
Mhm.
find things that maybe have worked in other groups or things that have stimulated conversation, and I'll create a record of those and I'll keep them on hand. So it's sort of a combination of both. But what I always try to do is I curate questions that are aimed at a person having to access areas about their purpose and their identity and their belief systems. Typically, those are kind of
Mhm.
things, and I try to always think about it from the standpoint of the kind of person I'm asking the question from. Typically, people who are experts, they're in that expert thought leader space, like to answer questions in a way that's going to be somewhat self-aggrandizing. They can answer
R
it in a way that
right.
allows them to show off aspects of themselves. Right. So
Mhm.
typically, I like to ask questions that a person will want to jump in on because it either it's really interesting, but it's also a way for them to kind of promote themselves a little bit and get themselves out there, get themselves seen.
Mhm.
So I always try to think about it from a number of different angles before I run one.
Yeah.
Um, but those are the kind of I also think about it from the standpoint of what kind of questions would I like to be asked. I'm also a very curious person. I have my hands in a lot of different things. I watch a lot of stuff. I love to learn. So
Mhm.
I'm a curious person myself, I think, and
Yeah.
therefore I think the questions is sort of are offshoots of the kind of things I'm learning or thinking about as
Mhm.
well. So I like to think of myself, I guess, as something of the guinea pig for everyone else in the group.
Yeah.
So
That's a good way. Yeah, and you do often have a lot of good follow-up questions where I will see that somebody answers and you don't let them just end at their answer. Well,
well, that's one of those tricks, right?
yeah.
Of managing, social media is engaging,
Mhm.
and I think that's something that I've had to learn. Like Facebook has changed a lot. Facebook is the primary platform that I'm on right now. My larger goal is to, of course, diversify across a lot of platforms,
Mhm.
proliferate a lot of content over time. But Facebook, to me, it used to be something where you could write fairly long authority posts and things of this nature and get good engagement on them and get commenting on them.
Mhm.
And I'm finding that as the landscape is sort of changing on Facebook, but also other social media, that's starting to move more toward like micro content.
Mhm.
Attention spans are getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
And I can find, I've invested a lot of time in writing really good content and putting out really thoughtful pieces and things. And over time, I've just found that those kinds of posts don't get the same level of engagement. People are looking for short things that they can jump in on and not make a big commitment to either reading or participating in. And so, what I like to do is I try to hook people in with the short engagement question and then do most of my authority building work in the comments as
Mm.
opposed to in the post.
Oh, very
So, there's
clever.
a strategy behind kind of what I'm doing is that I'm looking to engage not by necessarily providing answers or teaching directly, but by indirectly extracting it out of people by asking them
Mhm.
really high quality questions. So I'm effectively doing the same thing. I'm effectively presenting myself and my expertise a certain way, but I'm doing
Mhm.
it through a question form. And I find
Oh.
that it really helps because you can, people can see inside of the group if they'd like to join. I mean, you can see
Mhm.
lots of posts go over, 100 comments or something like that. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not uncommon. And, so I've kind of had to learn that. My group's a
Mm-hmm.
little over a year old. And so building the community, I've kind of sensed, okay, what are the things that really do work with my audience?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something I prefer. Like, I would prefer to put out longer form content, that a nice,
Right.
beautiful, authoritative content, hard hitting copy. But I really find that the questions are the things that hook people. And I can do
Mm-hmm.
the other work inside the comments through engagement.
Oh, that is really unique and different. I like that. And you
I think
do a good
so. I mean,
job with that.
but I do see other people who do it really well, and I, of course, learn from other people too all the time.
Right. Just like on the interview last week, we said there's nothing new under the sun. And that's true. And then afterwards, somebody followed up with me and told me that's actually a Bible verse.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So learn that too. The person I interviewed last week had that tattooed on her arm. And somebody that was watching contacted me after and said, "Did you know that's a Bible verse?" No, I didn't, but
Yeah. That
that
was
makes,
Solomon
yeah,
who wrote that.
yeah, that's, and it's very true.
Mhm.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, I think it's in Ecclesiastes, I believe.
Yeah,
Yep.
nice. Um,
Just a little bonus reference there for you.
yeah, I mean, you've got to know all the stuff. Um,
Well, in terms of things not being new under the sun, it's the things that are not new under the sun in terms of what we're talking about specifically are human nature.
yeah.
And people do, they have a desire to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be heard, to be listened to, right? And I think that something like engaging with people in a comment format, it's making people feel heard, first of all, and making people feel that they're cared for. You're paying attention. Somebody's listening to me. Somebody
Hmm.
wants to know more about me, right? And so being
Yep.
able to treat people that way with respect and with care and with, building a true relationship with people, those things really are not new. And sort of learning, I guess, the different formats of how to do that, those may change as different, social platforms emerge, right? We've gone through the Clubhouse thing earlier this year.
Hmm.
We do Twitter. We're doing, like I said, this micro content that's now sort of TikTok and Instagram Reels, and the
Hmm.
formats are kind of changing, and you've got to sort of flow with those. But the underlying principles are all about human nature, psychology, emotional triggers. Those are the things that are timeless and last. And as a copywriter, you would know that better than anyone, of course. So
Yeah,
those are the things that last.
for sure. That is definitely the case. And I was writing for somebody this week that was talking about doing a little brain training and, tricking your brain into not overindulging and not punishing yourself in the gym if you eat some Halloween candy, and absolutely hammering on the psychology of all of that, which is
Mhm.
huge for almost everybody. Um,
Yeah, that's the real stuff. Like, if a person, if I were to, give somebody a piece of advice in terms of business, like what are the kind of things to learn, it really is not so much the tactical stuff that everybody focuses on, the shiny objects that, okay, here's this new, whiz bang method of doing such and such. It's those kind of things. And I've been around the online world a really long time. I mean, I've been on the internet since the beginning of it. That was really when I first started my business. So across that time, I've gotten the perspective of being able to see a lot of things come and go, a lot
yeah.
of different channels that rose and fell, and things that were really popular, and different ways of selling products. And there's a lot of things that have come and gone and fallen by the wayside over the years, and they come and go really fast now, increasingly fast. But the
Mm-hmm.
things that stick, and the areas that I would tell people to really learn about is human behavior and psychology. Those are the things that are never going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're focusing on those principles, you can always adjust the strategies and tactics, but the core principles remain.
Yeah, that's a really good advice for somebody who is a newbie and experienced. Just read books that aren't even business books, and you can just learn all kinds of stuff. about
Yeah.
the way that people think and listen to people is really valuable.
Mhm.
So you mentioned we were talking about your group. Who would be the ideal person if somebody listening here thinks they might want to join your group? Who is the group best suited for? What kind of person?
Yeah, the kind of people that the group is tailored toward are people that are looking to become what I call a power persona. They're looking to be a personal brand out in the market, and be able to build, a really great business and a great life around their expertise, their personality, their passions. So that's typically the expert thought leader. Could be authors, speakers, consultants, coaches, advisors, strategists, people like that. Could be somebody who's a podcaster or a blogger, right? So they will model or market themselves, promote themselves in different ways. But the core idea is that you've got a message, you've got an expertise, and you're building a personal brand around yourself. You're the
Mhm.
face of your business, basically.
And from the talk that I've been hearing lately, personal brands are going to be the thing that's up and coming and current even
Mhm.
for businesses, because competing on price is for Walmart and Walmart only.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I mean the
yeah.
personal brand, and I think the future is very, very bright in personal branding. I
Mhm.
think that where technology is going, it's going to allow a person, from a spare room in their house to build a worldwide audience and be
Mhm.
able to connect with people. I think the things that are coming down the pipe in terms of virtual reality, we can have all sorts of things where, from the comfort of our house, it could be like we're in a room with other people and we're experiencing these sort of, deeper relationships with anyone around the world. And you're really able to connect with the people that really resonate with you the most, that are the most
Mhm.
like you, essentially. So one of the core strategies that I like is the Kevin Kelly 1,000 True Fans strategy, where essentially, if you can attract 1,000 people who really, really love you and really connect with you on all these different levels, you can essentially build the core of a fantastic business, because those people then become your white hot core that absolutely love, the raving fans, they love everything about you, and then they share your stuff with other people. And so the whole idea, it used to be that you had to sort of craft a persona for the public
Mhm.
because resources were somewhat scarce. It was limited to, your capacity to get in front of people was somewhat limited, and you had to try to appeal to everybody as much as possible. And I think that that's really changing, where I think that the future of personal branding is really going to become sharing more about more aspects of yourself, more aspects of your life, and allowing people into your life in a way that you never did before. You used to have
Mhm.
to create a personal brand to tailor it for a specific, niche. And you would only show those parts of yourself that were laser targeted to that niche. And you were going to curate your personality in a way and become a character of a certain type, right? To really sort of fit
Mhm.
that niche. And I think that the future of personal branding is really showing more of the full person, so that those people that connect with you on not only on a business level, but on the other levels, the kind of music that you like, it may be your political bent, right? It may be
Mhm.
different things about maybe the sports teams that you like or whatever. But the more that you share about yourself as a full person, you're
Mhm.
giving people more points of access into you. And I think that that's where you're going to be able to create these really, really deep relationships with that core fan base. And then those
Mhm.
people then are going to spread the word, from there. So I'm very, very bullish on the future of personal branding and building these sort of solopreneur businesses. Beyond that, I love the opportunity to collaborate with other people too, and be able
Mhm.
to build these sort of faculty-based business models where you bring a number of people together that are all really cool and different and so on, and do things like masterminds and membership, communities and so on. I really kind of think that's the future of where it's going. Very relationship based.
Mhm. I agree. Just in my own personal experience, anytime I've ever collaborated, no matter how small of a thing, it is always the most successful thing that I did that month. Because you're getting out in front of a new audience, and it for no money, for no marketing money, all of a sudden this other person's audience gets to see what you're doing, and there you go.
No, absolutely.
And I 100% with the personal brand. There are people that I follow that um I know people that would just hate them, but the way that they talk and the things that they like and the things that they do, I think are great. And I will, those are the people that I'll stick with and buy from and take their advice and all of those things. So
Sure.
I can, when you think about it, it's really easy to see that at work in your own life. And I think anybody could do that.
Yeah, and I think it's really liberating to think, you know what, I can just be myself. I don't really need to become a character like I used to maybe have to be able to. It
Mhm.
used to be, you're really trying, if you're selling, a Facebook program or something like that, Facebook marketing thing, you're going to want to try to tailor yourself to a certain kind of audience and be a certain type of personality or something. And I really think that the more that you show people your full life,
Mhm.
the more opportunities you have to connect with people. So, like, for example, in my community, two of my three kids are in there.
Mhm.
They're both teenagers, but they're both in there. My wife is in there. Right. So it's
Yeah.
sort of like my youngest daughter's only 13, so she's not in there yet. But it's like, the people in my community, they're getting to know my family, essentially. They're getting to know
Mhm.
my wife. They're getting to know my son. And my son's making a movie and he's shooting videos, and my daughter's putting out music and stuff like that. And people are they're getting to see slices of my personal life. And I'm always sharing
Mhm.
those kind of things. And so, the net effect of that is a much higher degree of trust and liking. Right? People
Yeah.
start to know you beyond just the business part, but it's really the full person. And I just think that has benefits that extend for years and years.
Mhm.
It's like a lot of there's people in my community that I've known for about 30 years.
Oh,
Those
wow.
friendships that I've had, those business connections they go back almost 30 years, and those people are in my community, right? And
Mhm.
it's just so cool to think that that's sort of the future of where business will go, is in terms of these relationships that I'm starting now, new people coming in and so on. I'm playing the long game. Like, I'm trying to look at that and develop these relationships over time, because they turn into all sorts of things.
Right.
I find so many people are focused just on the transactional. Let me get people in and I'm going to take them through a funnel and convert them into a paying customer.
Mhm.
It's just so short-sighted when you see people like that, when in fact that person may never become your customer, but they may introduce you to the right person who opens all these doors for you, or they may
Right.
become a collaborator, or they may promote you in some way, right? So it's a multifaceted approach and a view of things that I think, it gives you a much richer experience, and it makes it more fun for you as well, to be a
Mhm.
personal brand, essentially.
Now, what about apricot Buckley?
The pet influencer. It was an idea that my youngest daughter, the 13-year-old, came up with. And she was like, she has a bearded dragon. Apricot is a bearded dragon. And she was like, we should start an Instagram account for her. And it was kind of cool, because I was like, okay, for my 13-year-old, who naturally really is pretty gifted with social media. She's already like pretty savvy, as I think probably a lot of young kids are.
Yeah.
And I was like, this would be a great way for her to kind of learn the ropes and set
Mhm.
up this account, and we'll do this together. And we'll keep taking pictures of Apricot and kind of having a little bit of a storyline behind it. Like, so if
Mhm.
anybody follows this bearded dragon pet influencer account, there's all these little storylines that are in the background about, she got engaged recently. She loves Friday nights. She's
Oh,
lives in Malibu, right? So there's just all this kind of influencer stuff. So it's a
that's
pretty cool
funny.
little backstory sort of thing that we sort of created and make it different. But it's really fun.
I just saw that right before we were on here, and I followed the Instagram account, but I hadn't had a chance to read through it at all. But
It's really funny.
like,
It's
oh,
really
that's
wacky,
funny.
in certain ways, but it's fun.
I used like, oh gosh, probably more than 10 years ago, I had a Facebook account for my dog because the dog was a complete lunatic. And I had it for a while, and then I ended up deleting it because I was thinking, oh, this is going to be awful when he dies someday, that then he
Yeah,
has this Facebook page. So I removed it long before he passed away. But I feel like I was kind of a pioneer back there with
yeah.
the
It's
animal
a big thing,
influencer
right?
page.
And pet
Yeah.
influencers. Who would have thought?
Well, they're so fun. Now we have cats and they're crazy and they're always doing ridiculous things. I should have a page for them. They would love it.
Yeah.
Um, so you are an East Coast guy, right?
Mhm.
New Jersey.
I'm a Jersey native, lived most of my life in New Jersey, and then we relocated to Virginia
So
about 12 years ago.
what made you do the relocation?
It was purely lifestyle. We wanted to be able to raise our kids in a certain way and build a big house, and we homeschool our kids.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're sort of a one income family, and we wanted to be able to, obviously not have my wife work and focus on
Mhm.
the kids. We wanted to have a bunch of kids too. So
Yeah.
we have 3 kids. We homeschool them, and we just really wanted a better lifestyle. New Jersey is. I love New Jersey. I go back to New Jersey all the time, but it's a very expensive place to live, and
Mhm.
the lifestyle. It can be a brutal lifestyle in New Jersey. So we wanted somewhere that was physically, like geographically, really beautiful. We live
Mhm.
very close to the Blue Ridge Mountains. We're in kind of horse country, wine country.
Oh, nice.
Was able to build a big house on a big piece of land, and it was all pure lifestyle move.
Mhm.
But we travel back up. Family is up there, and and then my wife's mother moved down here,
Oh,
so she
nice.
lives nearby, and so it's great. We get it. We have family's very, very important to us, and so
Mhm.
lifestyle and family, I guess, were some of those core reasons.
Yeah. Um, I didn't realize that you homeschool your kids. That's interesting. So do you include, if you said your son is into YouTube and your daughter makes music, is learning how to do those things included as part of their homeschool curriculum?
Not really part of their curriculum, but part of the reason that we homeschooled was to give our kids a chance to pursue their passions. That
Mhm.
we can complete school in a few hours a day, and then they have the rest of the day to go and pursue what they really love.
Yeah.
So I mean, sometimes I guess on some things, like for example, my son has done some things with learning about film and taken some film classes and things, that so we'll count those as
Mhm.
accredited. But for the most part, you know we've just pretty much tried to create space for our kids to really do what they love, and that was one of the drivers. So my son, for example, he's already got one feature film under his belt. He made a movie a couple of years ago. He was all over television and radio and newspapers,
Oh, cool.
and now he's making a second movie. So we're just about getting ready to do a round of fundraising for his budget for his movie.
Oh,
But
nice.
he's already written the script. So he's 17.
Mhm.
My oldest daughter, is 19, but she's released a couple of EPs
Mhm.
already. So she's been in the recording studio. She has written songs. All 3 of my kids have YouTube channels, so they're learning a lot of stuff. And but it's really for them to do what they love. They're all really
Yeah,
smart and creative and in their own ways, and you know just want them to do what they're really happy with.
that's really cool. Um, I I'm taking piano lessons recently, and I was learning about music theory, which I had never really known anything about before. So this different teacher is taking me through this, and we were just talking the other day about how much goes into making a movie or a TV show where you use the chords that are scary or suspenseful for,
Mhm.
all of these scenes. And I had never in my life thought about the amount of detail that goes into all of that and how
Yeah.
many of them never even get off the ground or they're not good or whatever. And there was still all this work, but meaning just to say, to see a teenager doing a movie and doing things like that, that's really impressive.
I'm
Um,
proud of him. He's a great kid. In fact, a lot of people inside of the group, they see a lot of the video content that we produce, and we always get really high marks for, like, people are like, your video stuff is so great, it's so spot on.
mhm.
My son is really the guy who shoots all my video.
Oh, wow.
He's the guy that he lights everything, he shoots it. I just put out a course, a couple of hour course. He
Mhm.
shot the whole thing and edited it, and
Ugh,
so it's nice to have that built into the house.
no kidding. It's kinda, trained up your own support team there almost.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I went to film school. I went to New York University Film School back in the day. So it's really been really nice to have, like, a son that, like, he likes all the same stuff.
Mhm.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Mine likes different things than I do, like camping and fishing and stuff.
Mhm.
All these things I have never done and been grossed out by in the past. So, but that is also good because now I'm learning all these new things.
Exactly. It's really fun, isn't it? When your kids
Hmm.
can teach you things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Or you learn along, like he's in Cub Scouts, and I feel like I am also earning the badges along with him.
Hmm. I hear you. Yeah.
Definitely not anything that I ever did as a kid. I was inside with a book most of the time or riding my bike. I was definitely not touching worms, definitely not fishing or sleeping in a tent. So it's fun.
Yep. It's a growth experience for all.
Expand my horizons, survive thunderstorms under a canvas tent secured by spikes in the dirt.
Yeah. Well, now, as a copywriter, right? That's one of the key hallmarks of being a copywriter is curiosity
Yep.
and wanting to learn and right going into these new worlds and learning all these interesting facts and stuff like that. I remember
Hmm.
reading a book about a book that Joe Sugarman wrote called Triggers, I believe it was. And Joe Sugarman was talking about, that was the real thing that led him to wanting to be a copywriter. Was he was finding that he would become intensely curious about things for a time, and he would learn everything he could about that thing, and then he would get bored with it and want to move on to something else. And that trait served him really, really well as a copywriter because he could take on a project, immerse himself in it, learn the most obscure little details that he could use in his copy,
Hmm.
and then once the project was done, go and move and learn something else, right? So I guess
Huh.
if we look at it that way, it's like, okay, you know,
That that definitely sounds familiar to me.
yeah,
Like I always joke that if I was ever on Jeopardy and there was like an Outlander category, like, I got this. I know
yeah,
everything there is to know about the Outlander book series, the Outlander TV show, the actors, the
mhm,
everything. So
sure,
I'm not bored with that yet, but I kind of do the same thing.
mhm,
And
yeah, great
another
trait.
thing is that is good for copywriters, but good trait in general, I guess, is that I've always been really observant of other people's I don't know, quirky expressions and words they use a lot and things like that, and I could always mimic people really well. And not to say that I was making fun of people, but I've always just noticed the little things. So then when I get a job to write in somebody else's voice, it's
Yeah,
easier for me to do that because I've already been paying attention to how they write and how they talk and all of the things.
yeah, that's funny. It's interesting you mentioned that. I've loved from the time I was a little kid doing impressions of people.
Mhm.
So I've always learned my son now does that too. My son is doing he's always perfecting an impression right now. But it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, you start to learn the little verbal tics and the mannerisms and the kind of language they use and the patterns they use. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, being perceptive and observant and curious, those traits really serve you well in a lot of capacities. So,
And I don't know if they can be taught. Um, if somebody was open to learning it, you might be able to get better at it, but I feel like it's something that you either have or you don't have.
hmm, I would argue probably it is learnable.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been curious about people and wanted to do impressions of them,
Mhm.
but I was always more awkward in terms of conversations. I was, and I still am, a kind of person who naturally sort of doesn't like chit chat, like small talk. It's always been
Mhm.
very hard for me. And the pathway to me that led me to being able to have quality conversations was asking questions. And I did have to learn that. I had to learn how to sort of put myself in a curious state and then want to develop the skill to listen and ask questions.
Mhm.
Because and listening is one of those stealth skills that, once you master it, people start to think of you as some like amazing conversationalist. And all you're really doing is asking them questions. You're pulling it out of them, and they feel like, wow, you're so fascinating. Like you're so, and if you really were to look at a transcript of the conversation, it was like you didn't necessarily say much of anything, but
Right.
you really asked questions and you pulled it out of them and you were curious about them. And people
Mhm.
respond to it as if, you're like this conversational wizard.
Right.
But it's really and learning how to listen and ask questions. I believe really is one of those learnable skills
Hmm.
that's super super valuable to learn.
I would say it is learnable if the person is willing to learn
Of
it.
course, yeah,
Um,
yeah. As with anything, right?
hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
But definitely one of those things that a lot of people don't realize they are lacking in, um,
yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. Yeah, it is funny, the conversational thing when you end up asking people questions and they talk about themselves, but people love to talk about most people. I've definitely run into some that are like asking a brick wall, that
Yeah.
one word answers and they're done. Yeah, okay, this
But
is
there's a
pain.
way there's a way through that actually is to learn what kinds of things open people up. That's why at the beginning, at the top of our talk, I was mentioning accessing people at the level of their purpose in life and their
Mhm.
identity. Those are the two areas, specifically a person's purpose. If you can ask them questions about what is most important to them and why those things are important to them, you will find that more often than not, you're going to hit a gusher. And those people that are giving you one word answers, you find that thing that they love the most, and you find that thing that they find the most important that accesses these higher levels of kind of who they are.
Mhm.
That's where then you're not going to be able to get them to stop talking, because those are the things that people are just drawn toward, just sharing the most about themselves. And those are
So
the things that get them most excited. Those are the things that get people the most enthusiastic. And when people are talking about things from their level of their purpose and their passion, that's where their natural charisma is released as well. So if you
mhm.
can get a person who's normally fairly boring or whatever, they're quiet, if you can get them on those topics, you will find their natural charisma will be released. And they're just going to become animated, a whole different type of person. So it's really interesting, but it goes back to all of that psychology and emotional triggers. When you can access those buttons to push, boom, magic can really happen.
So when you're in a conversation with somebody and they're the, one word answer person, how
Mhm.
do you find what they will talk about? Do you ask them directly? Do you just try a couple different subjects? What do you do?
Yeah, there's a few different pathways. I mean, I think, just starting in a conversation with, where a person is from, that kind of a thing can, and well, have you always lived there and blah, blah, blah. And what led you there? And typically you'll start to unravel a little bit of their history. And then you can start to probe into that. Well, what was it about that? What led you to do that? Blah, blah, blah. And you'll find typically that a person will start to reveal more about themselves and what they do and so on. That's where you can start getting into, okay, well, what do you love most about that? Right? What's most important to you about that? Those type of questions, the person begins to access the intuitive side of their mind.
Mhm.
They have to think about it, and it pulls something out from a different side of them that again releases this stuff. So that's kind of how I mean, it's not automatic and it certainly doesn't happen every time, but
Right.
there is a pathway to access people. Now, if a person is actively resisting, that's a different, you're never
Right.
going to crack that.
Right.
But if a person, is just sort of quiet and reserved,
Mhm.
there's ways to pull that yarn a little bit and start to peel it back. And you'd be
Interesting.
amazed at how far you can take it. I taught my daughter
Mhm.
actually. My daughter, my oldest daughter, is somewhat introverted by nature. She
Mhm.
makes friends very easily and so on, but I kind of taught her how to open a person up. And she kind of started to take it and learn that skill. And like my 19-year-old is now like a master conversationalist.
Huh.
She has these coffee conversations with friends and so on. And she has now become like the go-to person when a person wants somebody to talk to understand them or share something with. They always go to my daughter, and but because she's learned these skills, and it was not natural.
No,
So
it's not natural. In fact, this is super, and I can't wait to get out and try this because I am the kind of person who doesn't care for silence.
mhm.
So if I'm around somebody and there's a lot of silence, I will just and it
Yeah,
doesn't. it's chatter and just filling the space. And even as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, gosh, just be quiet. Or why can't I think of something better to say than what I keep saying? So this is really useful
Yeah, it's a
tool
completely
for
different
me.
path in questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm super excited to go out in the world and
Great.
start practicing this new skill.
Awesome.
And it's really, vital for everybody to know how to make conversation and get along. I can't tell you how many people I come across that are almost paralyzed from doing anything social because they just don't want to deal with it. It's too stressful. And, that's, to me,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
especially in
foreign.
marketing too. If anybody's, in business, the entrepreneurial people who are doing
Mhm.
marketing, research is one of those biggest, is again another one of those stealth things that virtually nobody really does.
Mhm.
That's a master key that unlocks a lot of things. So if you can learn how to have sort of semi-structured conversations with people in your audience, you're going to basically be able to extract the hopes, dreams, fears, problems of your market in the language that they describe them in, right? And it's going to be able to enable you to. I've heard, Eben Pagan is one of the people that I love the most. I've followed him for a lot of years. He has
Who
a
is
saying
that?
that compassion is the greatest skill in business. I'm paraphrasing, but
Okay.
compassion is the greatest skill in business because when you can get into a connection of empathy with someone and you're able to really deeply listen to somebody and understand them and understand the way that the movies that they make in their mind when they think about certain things,
Mhm.
and you can really deeply connect with that and resonate with that leads to everything else. It leads you to the kind of products that you'll create, the kind of services you'll offer, all of your marketing, right? All of the language you use in copy, the kind of
Mhm.
videos you make, etc. Because you're understanding people very deeply, you're taking the time to get to know them, you have a sense of compassion and empathy for them. It transforms your whole ability to do business. I mean, at a whole other level.
Mhm.
So master skill for sure.
What was that guy's name that you said you
Eben
followed?
Eben Pagan.
Eben Pagan.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
Yeah,
learning all
he's one of
kinds of
the,
things.
longtime, really great internet marketers and information marketers for sure. He has a great book out called Opportunity, um, which I like quite a bit.
Okay. I've written down 3 books now that you've
Okay,
mentioned that I haven't read yet. So,
great, great.
um, that's awesome. Always, always down for a good book recommendation. That's for sure.
Sure. I got a lot of them.
Yeah. I do too, but I am somewhat new to reading business books. For the longest time, I knew they would probably be valuable, but I kept falling asleep when I would try to read them. And so I just didn't. And then I stumbled across a Zoom book club last year, and that has been the key that has finally gotten me consistently reading business books. One
Great.
chapter at a time, totally, doable,
Hmm.
not trying to binge read some kind of book that, like I said, would put me to sleep, even though, oh, this is great information. And now I'm sleeping.
Yeah, yeah. Learning is one of those great. I mean, whether it's reading or whether it's watching YouTube or something. I love YouTube.
Mhm.
Some people love podcasts and listen to a ton of podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm not that much of a podcast listener, just audio, but I watch a lot of them on YouTube.
Hmm.
So it depends on what you like. But yeah,
Yeah.
I personally love to read myself,
Me
lifelong.
too.
Yeah.
I had trouble getting into podcasts, but then I am now a co-host on a podcast since last year.
Hmm.
So I thought I probably better listen to some.
Yeah.
And I have found a few that I like. But it takes me, if it's like a over an hour podcast, it will take me 2 weeks to listen to it because
Sure.
I listen to it in the car or, just here and there, little bits of it,
Yeah.
chunks.
That's all good. Just got to keep
Hmm.
going, right? Keep making progress and keep learning.
Yep. All right. Well, I have learned a ton today. That's for sure.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much for coming on here. I really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. And I'm sure that anybody here watching has also gotten a ton of nuggets. I did post a link to your group in the comments.
Beautiful.
And I'm going to be checking out the books that you mentioned also. I've seen this 1,000 True Fans mentioned by other people, and I think you before too, because
That's actually not a book. That's an article.
Oh, an article?
Yeah, so you can just go on Google and get that for free.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It was a very influential article. Tim Ferriss has championed that article quite a bit among other people, but Tim Ferriss is probably the person I would say that's most responsible for making that go mainstream. But yeah, it's a fairly easy read too.
Yeah.
But the concepts and the principles behind it are, I think, timeless and where things are going.
Yeah. Cool.
But, well, great.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks. And if you want to follow Apricot on Instagram, you can do that. Otherwise, you can join Rocky's group. It's a really good, interesting group, and I definitely recommend checking it out.
Wonderful. Thank you. Great to
All
be
right.
here. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.